GeorgeNotFound has lost hundreds of thousands of subscribers like a bad sitcom after the first season, and it's all because another creator accused him of assaulting her. In this video, we're breaking down exactly how GeorgeNotFound got caught in one of the biggest controversies the Minecraft community has ever seen, the shocking inconsistencies in the story that nobody wants to talk about, and why, even after presenting evidence in his defense, George still can't escape the shadow of these allegations. GeorgeNotFound has had one of the most successful careers in the Minecraft community. With over 10 million subscribers, dozens of viral uploads, and connections with some of the most influential creators in that space, he seemed untouchable.
We can troll him indefinitely.
Alright, what do we say to him?
Tell him his rat is in here.
George's very first video was a boring streaming session, which featured notes and some music. But after a while, he posted more videos, each more dramatic than the last. He slowly started blowing up on YouTube. All it took was a single video, followed by a disastrous response, to topple what looked like an unshakable empire. Similar to Sienna Mae Gomez, another creator accused of groping her teenage friend Jack Wright.
And my boyfriend at the time were like, Sienna, this is embarrassing. You need to stop posting on TikTok.
GeorgeNotFound received a lot of criticism when a Twitch streamer by the name of CaitiiBugs went live with her viewers and shared a worrisome experience.
I want to start this by saying I wouldn't be here without Shelby. I was ready to disappear with this secret forever. I never knew that creators were allowed to talk about these kinds of things, and I guess I'm still new to it all. I just didn't feel brave enough, and I still don't. But her strength made me feel like it may be okay. A little while ago, my story had almost been leaked without me knowing, so here it is on my terms. Here's my story. Last year, at the beginning of summer, I was assaulted by a significantly older and popular content creator.
According to her account, the incident took place in a hotel room after a convention she attended with a few friends. She claimed that the assaulter was best friends with a famous creator who, at the time, was dating one of Katie's own friends.
I was freshly 18 and had just graduated high school a few weeks prior. I was drunk in a hotel room with other people around me when it happened. He was someone I had once watched, and he was 8 years older than me, and far more powerful.
Katie and her group ended up going back to a hotel room after drinking heavily because Katie's friend wanted to keep talking to a particular love interest. She alleged that once inside, they were offered even more alcohol and pressured into various drinking games. Katie then described how, while playing, the creator sitting beside her began touching her under the guise of tickling. She claimed the situation was so terrifying that she froze, unable to react, only managing to escape after what felt like several unbearable minutes.
It was a little after that, when I had resorted to playing games on my phone when it happened. Out of nowhere, I felt him slip his hand under my clothes.
According to Katie, when the night finally ended, the unarmed creator, whom we would later discover to be GeorgeNotFound, insisted on escorting her back to her room, something she was deeply uncomfortable with.
It was a first. That night, it was the first time anyone had ever touched me. I assured myself that I was just being sensitive about it all, that it wasn't a big deal, but assuring only can go so far. I felt dirty in a way that I couldn't wash off. I couldn't help the way that my body reacted and flinched. part of me still wanted to feel cool about it all.
Almost immediately after her stream ended, YouTube and Twitter exploded with speculation over who Caitie was referring to. Twitter detectives pieced together the hints she'd dropped in the video. The oldest content creator at VidCon Anaheim 2023, who was 26 and closely tied to Caitie's friend Dream, is GeorgeNotFound. George was quick to respond to these allegations.
In this stream, I'm going to be talking about some very serious topics, including assault, abuse, and things of sexual nature. So if any of these are triggering topics for you, please be aware of that and be cautious. Recently, a streamer named CaitiiBugs went live and told a story involving me about sexual assault. So in this stream, I'm going to be addressing it.
As soon as GeorgeNotFound confirmed that he was the guy in question, Twitter fingers pounced on him in an instant. They claimed he was guilty and mocked his so-called PR response while tackling his claims that Caitie had given him consent.
Very important. Finally, before I play the video, do not send hate to Caitie. That is not the goal of this, and I do not want you guys doing that. So, let's play the video. Okay, so this is my side of the story of the 2 times that I ever interacted with CaitiiBugs in real life. So the first time that I met her, it was in Dream's hotel room at VidCon. To give context about Dream's hotel room, essentially...
Some even went as far as openly hoping George would harm himself.
Not much about him, so I'm going to ask you in a second.
GeorgeNotFound, kill yourself. I'm not even joking on a serious thing.
It's important to point out that Caitie had only presented allegations and little concrete evidence at that point. It's no secret that accusations spread like wildfire when it comes to the Minecraft community, and most of these allegations are often based on speculations. But George had only one chance to redeem his name. If he failed to present his side of the story accurately and convincingly, the hate he had already endured would only grow worse.
I cannot believe how the George stuff from a year ago went down. I cannot believe the response to it online. It's disgusting. It's sexist, man. And you and your friends' references and the way you talk about women behind the scenes has been so sexist too. Shame on you guys.
Before George could go live with his explanation, however, Caitie struck back on Twitter with a since-deleted message saying she had screen-recorded evidence, and she plans on using it to support her case if needed. After which she went on to call him a coward. Despite George saying he wanted to share his side, many people online had already decided he was guilty and refused to hear him out. It was at this point that George decided to talk about his first meeting with Caitie and her friends in Dream's hotel room, which, according to him, was a very different scenario from the one she described.
2 times that I ever interacted with CaitiiBugs in real life. So the first time that I met her, it was in Dream's hotel room at VidCon. To give context about Dream's hotel room, essentially it was a bigger room than average. It's not just a bed in a room like a typical hotel room is. Essentially it's there was a living room, there was a table, and the bedroom was kind of separated from it. And for this reason, we used his hotel room essentially as a place where all of our friends could hang out in. VidCon is a 4-day long event, so we actually used it quite frequently throughout these 4 days. And we had creators, friends in and out of this room throughout the whole event. Now, the first night that I actually met Caitie, I was with Dream in his hotel room, and Dream was in a group chat with 5 other people. These 5 people included CaitiiBugs, her best friend, and 3 other of her friends. Now,
sadly, he didn't get the kind of reception he was hoping for. Immediately after George and Dream released their statements, Caitie returned to Twitter with a lengthy 10-page document aimed at countering their claims. But instead of providing clarity, her response raised even more questions than it answered.
Big allegations. Now, immediately, everyone on Twitter believed her. Some people said she's lying.
She began by challenging George's argument about nonverbal consent, declaring that the absence of verbal consent meant there was no consent at all. She specifically highlighted George's own admission that he had touched her while she was intoxicated, insisting that for her, the conversation ended there. From the start, Caitie's strategy seemed clear. She sought to undermine George's entire account by reducing the debate to verbal consent alone, dismissing the other cues George claimed had indicated mutual interest. In hindsight, many critics argue that George might have saved himself endless trouble had he simply walked away from the situation altogether.
the first night that I actually met Caitie, I was with Dream in his hotel room, and Dream was in a group chat with 5 other people. These 5 people included CaitiiBugs, her best friend, and 3 other of her friends. Now, these 5 people, they're at an official VidCon after party, and they wanted Dream to go meet up with them and hang out with them. But Dream actually didn't want to hang out with them, and the reason is because at the time he was wearing his Dream mask a lot, and he felt uncomfortable wearing it because it's a whole mask on your face. So he just didn't want to go to the party particularly. He even suggested that they shouldn't come because he was assuming that they were having more fun where they were.
To make matters worse, Caitie admitted that she had deliberately left out information during her first telling of the story. She explained that she had intended to reveal it only if George denied the physical contact. In other words, she already knew the internet would deduce his identity and wanted to ensure he faced consequences regardless of how he responded.
To get into the hotel, you need to have a VidCon creator badge, and only 2 of the people in the group chat actually had this badge. That was Caitie and her best friend. So eventually what happened is Caitie and 2 of her other friends came to Dream's hotel room. This was my first time actually meeting them in real life. I didn't even know who they were before meeting them. And then we essentially just were playing drinking games in the hotel room. We were just having fun, talking with each other. Nothing crazy in particular.
In the response video she made, Caitie also attempted to discredit some of the evidence he shared, pointing out that it came from a group chat he wasn't part of. She dismissed the mobile game, which George emphasized at the group's focus that night, as irrelevant, despite earlier claiming it had been her escape from an uncomfortable situation while laying emphasis on the details of the assault.
It's touching that he admitted to not asking or getting my consent before he did. He felt up my tits. On a couch with other people there. He stuck his hand up my shirt, under my bra, and felt up, whatever you want to say. He felt up my tits. Unwanted sexual touch is literally in the definition of sexual assault. It's fucking sexual assault, and I'm never gonna apologize for saying it is, okay? It isn't fake allegations. It's not fake allegations. I'm not a liar. Quite literally, the thing that I was talking about is my sexual assault, and that's the one thing he confirmed. He can sit there and confirm that he did it, and I'm still sat here getting called a liar, getting called a fake victim, getting called, what was it, a slut and a prude at the same time.
After people accused her of staging the whole thing just so she could get close to GeorgeNotFound and eventually point fingers at him, she explained her decision to return to the hotel a second time, saying that she had heard another popular creator she wanted to meet was there. Caitie then discussed some of the messages exchanged between her and George, though she admitted she had left out yet another significant detail, George's friend, who had also been present in the hotel room.
Eventually, later in the night, I found myself alone with him and his friend. Everyone else either passed out or sick.
Ironically, based on the Twitter response, which has now been deleted, she also confirmed that she and George had indeed been cuddling. Caitie agreed that while George had initiated most of it, she had initiated some because she was intoxicated. She also revealed that most of what George perceived as affectionate gestures was simply drunkenness.
This isn't about canceling. This is about real people's lives. I live this every night and every morning. With every touch, I relive that room. It's about connections. One of my best friends, Rue, and I have bonded over similar experiences. And I'm sure there's many others like us. I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by friends who support me.
When pressed on why she hadn't simply moved away if she felt truly uncomfortable, Caitie explained that she didn't want to make what she called a bold move that might bruise George's ego in front of the others. At one point, she even admitted that she was chilling in the moment because she was drunk, confessing that she still needed to ponder on it.
And so does he. He knows. And I have creators and friends that also know, and some who were there.
This new version of events stood in stark contrast to her original livestream. At first, Caitie had portrayed herself as showing obvious discomfort that George ignored. In her new narrative, she claimed that she intentionally hid her discomfort, but somehow expected George to detect it regardless.
I spent so long looking up to creators that I didn't know. who I had never met, aspiring to be a part of a behind the scenes that I didn't understand yet. Sometimes I wish back to when I was unknowingly looking from the outside. I now have a ruined perception, or rather a truthful one. In this community, a lot of us are told to remain silent and to bite our tongues, and those who speak out against it are often isolated. And that's wrong. It's all wrong. But most importantly,
Despite the contradictions, Twitter quickly latched onto one idea: the lack of verbal consent. For many, that single point erased every other detail. Users posted comments like, if George himself confirmed he inappropriately touched her, what's left to discuss? Others insisted that George was reckless as both an adult and a public figure for interacting with a visibly young, drunk teenager who never verbally consented. To them, intoxication alone meant that consent was impossible, and any physical contact equated to assault.
Hi, I want to make sure you're okay. I like the way George was so touchy and told me ab the shirt thing. I want to make sure you're alright. I'm okay. It was definitely a bit weird, but I was drunk, so I didn't feel like doing anything to stop it anyway. And it's over now, so what? I should didn't make anything double last night. I had no clue. I'm in the moment. I was chilling, especially after verifying it's a news 18. I was chilling in the moment.
Because Caitie's narrative aligned so neatly with the concept of absolute verbal consent, her account was far easier for the public to accept without further scrutiny. George, now under immense pressure, made a fateful move that only worsened his situation. On March 12, 2024, he released a Twitter post containing what many considered his biggest mistake: a public apology. In it, George admitted that Caitie's most recent statement had changed his perspective, writing that he was sorry for what happened.
Felt lucky to be talking to a verified account, someone famous, someone I had followed and watched for a while. Now, this is not something that I was thinking about at all. I wasn't aware that she ever watched my content in the past. That was never brought up. This actually makes me feel pretty bad. The only reason she was messaging me was because I have subscribers or something. I would never want that. Again, the only reason I actually brought up us messaging after the fact was to show that we were still friendly afterwards, and that I didn't know that she was uncomfortable at the time. She also confirms that we did talk on Snapchat, like I said.
Whether he realized it or not, the apology was immediately interpreted by many as an outright admission of guilt. For those who had already condemned him, it served as final confirmation. Matters escalated when his two closest friends, Sapnap and Dream, both publicly supported Caitie. Dream, who happened to be one of George's close friends, even hosted a Twitter space where he described George's behavior as effed up, and expressed regret for his own involvement in the situation.
Just to say, because I feel it necessary to say, because it is what I believe, and it is how I feel. I think that George left that night feeling the same way that I did. And I think that that's just as fucked up as the fact that I didn't know. I think that the problem lies in that.
By March 16th, George attempted damage control by uploading a second response video. He began by once again walking viewers through the timeline: Caitie's initial stream, his own response, her lengthy Twitter post, and the fallout. He emphasized that he did not want any harassment or hate directed toward anyone involved.
I do not send hate to Caitie. That is not the goal of this, and I do not want you guys doing that.
George then carefully debunked several of Caitie's claims. He revisited the drinking game, her reasons for going to the hotel, and their subsequent private messages. He revealed Instagram DMs in which Caitie admitted she continued messaging him because she felt lucky to be speaking with a verified famous account. George explained this made him feel terrible because he had never realized she viewed him that way. To him, referencing their friendly exchanges was proof that she hadn't been uncomfortable during or immediately after their encounter.
They were all in the group chat and part of the discussion to go to the hotel. I also chose to mention my online friend. It doesn't really add to the story, but she never mentioned him or the 8th person that she brought with. So I'm just saying it because that's how it happened, and I want to make sure the story is straight. Another thing that she talks about is how we insisted that she drinks more and that we insisted on playing drinking games when this isn't the case. Again, they had already been drinking at this party before they arrived to the hotel room, And they had also been the ones that were asking to play the drinking games. So instead of us insisting that we play it, they were actually the ones that were asking us. And you can see that in the screenshots here. They had actually texted multiple times, specifically wanting to play this drinking game that we had played the night before. And at this point, I was pretty drunk, and so was basically everyone in this room. It was the last night of VidCon.
He also clarified that they had spoken briefly on Snapchat, though he insisted nothing significant had happened there. George also drew attention to another inconsistency in Kaitie's 10-page document, her omission of his online friend who had also been in the room. Kaitie justified leaving him out by saying he had left early, yet she also used a message allegedly from him describing George cuddling with her and noting her age. To George, this was a deliberate attempt to portray the situation as more damning, suggesting that even his friend had felt uncomfortable and recognized the age gap.
We then moved to the couch. There was a couch in the room, and I sit next to Kaitie. She also says, looking back on the scenario, that she confused her nerves for excitement when I sit next to her. But again, at this moment in time, everything was friendly. Nothing sexual had happened. I'm just literally sitting next to her on the couch. And during this, she was laughing, smiling. She gave no indication that she was uncomfortable with me sitting this close to her. She also mentions that she was thinking about my age and that I was a lot older than her. Again, she was 18 and I was 26 at the time. And again, to clarify, I actually didn't know how old she was, despite her claiming that I did, just because it was in her bio.
George argued that this was misleading. If Kaitie's friend had left early and barely knew either of them, then presenting his supposed message as evidence only added confusion. He stressed that Kaitie's ever-changing story and decision to casually omit some details made defending himself nearly impossible, as each new piece of information emerged only after his apology video.
We then moved to the couch. There was a couch in the room, and I sit next to Kaitie. She also says, looking back on the scenario, that she confused her nerves for excitement when I sit next to her. But again, at this moment in time, everything was friendly. Nothing sexual had happened. I'm just literally sitting next to her on the couch. And during this, she was laughing, smiling. She gave no indication that she was uncomfortable with me sitting this close to her. She also mentions that she was thinking about my age and that I was a lot older than her. Again, she was 18 and I was 26 at the time. And again, to clarify, I actually didn't know how old she was, despite her claiming that I did, just because it was in her bio.
Throughout his second response video, George repeatedly tried to show that their interaction had not been malicious. He emphasized that Kaitie was smiling, laughing, and playfully engaging with him throughout their time together, giving him no reason to believe she was distressed. He admitted that in hindsight the optics looked worse than they had felt at the time, and he conceded that he should have been more cautious. But he continued to insist that in the moment, their interaction seemed mutual.
And it was clear to anyone there that she was not uncomfortable with me sitting next to her. Then eventually 2 of the people that came to the hotel room left. So then it was just down to me, Dream, my online friend, Kaitie, Kaitie's best friend, and a 6th mutual friend. Next she says, this is a quote, resorted to playing games on her phone to avoid the awkward situation. Now, I just don't see how this is the case. She's implying that she is using her phone to essentially escape, such an awkward scenario.
After George's second response video, it would appear that the storm had finally passed, but in reality, the damage had already been done. His reputation had taken a massive hit, and no matter how many clarifications he tried to provide, the internet had already latched on to Kaitie's version of events.
18-year-old drunk girl's tummy, and this is a reaction.
My friend!
Guys, who is this guy?
Or anybody else as a scapegoat for your fucking sexual abuse is disgusting!
On social media, the debate spiraled into 2 camps. Supporters of Kaitie pointed to George's own admissions that he had touched her under her shirt as proof that his apology wasn't just damage control, but confirmation of wrongdoing. Meanwhile, George's defenders highlighted the inconsistency in Kaitie's story, and how she had also admitted leaving out some details and the fact that her friend group already disliked George and Dream before the incident even came to light.
What the fuck does that have to do with you touching me and not asking first? What the fuck? Your friend wasn't there when it happened! Oh, this is all the stuff she left out. She left this out because she can't be trusted and is leaving important info out. I left out the 2 people that were in that room that weren't there for my assault. I was talking about my assault. They weren't there for it. Why would I? He's put in this position, right? To pick out every inconsistency and especially pick out any information I didn't mention.
But soon, the controversy became a heated argument about whether nonverbal cues can realistically be considered consent. And if an 18-year-old who's been drinking capable of consenting at all?
Now, just because people are saying that doesn't mean that, you know, he's not guilty. But I think it is worth noting people are taking this allegation very seriously. Wishing death on all these people. They are completely believing it 1000%. And I find it interesting.
Unfortunately, for George, mainstream opinion towards him took on a negative note, and when Dream and Sapnap publicly distanced themselves from him, people were quick to point out the fact that even his closest friends didn't believe him. By the time his second response video dropped, most of the internet had already made up their minds.
And I think that's something that he has to accept and reflect on himself, and realize. I think that he has stuff to say that he will. I don't know exactly what it will be or what he'll say.
But George was not dismayed by all the negative comments online. Instead, he sought to prove his innocence by pointing out Katie's timeline that certainly did not add up and the so-called evidence she had presented. And that's where things got interesting. In his video, George recalled how when he first saw Katie's new claims, it completely changed his perspective on the night. Specifically, her framing of his online friend's involvement made him second-guess everything.
This is phrased in a way that makes me look kind of creepy, to be honest. She's basically saying she left, so I decided to leave too, which is not the case. What actually happened is Dream had decided he was too tired and was going to bed. So the night was over, and we all left. She then goes on to tell a story about the elevator, and how I joked about it being broken to try get her to go in with me. So Katie actually had her own hotel room on the same floor as Dream. So she actually didn't have to take the elevator. She walked me to the elevator when she didn't have to and said goodnight to me, which was nice of her. I did joke with her about coming in the elevator by pretending that it was broken. I went into the elevator, the doors closed, and I would press the doors open button to make it open again. I did this a few times.
Katie had claimed that George's friend, who was also present in the hotel room, had left early, and before leaving, allegedly sent a text that read, "I'm currently watching George, 26, cuddle with Katie, 18. If that were true, it would suggest two devastating things. First, that someone else had been uncomfortable with George's behavior, and second, that this friend already knew Katie's age when George supposedly did not. George revealed that after reading Katie's post, he called his friend directly to clear things up. The conversation that followed poked massive holes in Katie's narrative.
So I reached out to my friend to talk to him about it, and it turns out that he actually didn't send this message. I'm going to play a phone call that I had with him after I found this out, just because I think it gives more context.
What's up?
So there is a text that is claimed to be from you.
Yeah, I didn't send that text. I found out about it when you sent it to me. But yeah, no, that wasn't me. I don't know where they got that from. I didn't ask them for any of their phone numbers or anything like that.
Can you kind of just talk me through your, anything that you remember from essentially the entire event?
A little bit before VidCon.
Also, GeorgeNotFound told his friend that there was a text which Katie had claimed was from him. His friend's response was blunt.
I think it was towards 9 or 10 o'clock. We met up at Dream Spot. Then it was just us three for a bit, and then you or Dream mentioned just having some people come over and hang out. We were playing, I forget what the drinking was called. I think it was kind of like Cards Against Humanity, something similar to that. I didn't really notice anything out of the ordinary. I didn't really notice any bad vibes or anything like that. It was a little playful, maybe a little flirty. I noticed you guys were just kind of playing with each other and just kind of cuddled up a little bit on the couch. So it definitely didn't seem like she was uncomfortable, I don't know. It seemed like everybody that was there was having a good time, because we were there pretty late, so I don't really follow this internet stuff like that, so I'm not up to date with what's going on online. The way she was explaining everything, at least to me, it was not like that at all. To me, it kind of seems like a misunderstanding.
This testimony alone undermined Katie's credibility, but the contradictions didn't stop there. When Dream later questioned Katie directly about the screenshot of the alleged message, she backpedaled. Katie would later claim that it was an error, saying that the text hadn't come from George's male friend at all, but from another girl who was at the hotel that night. But this explanation raised more questions. If it truly came from someone else, why hadn't Katie clarified that earlier? And why frame it in such a way that made it seem like George's close friend was sounding the alarm? With what we know now, Katie's explanation seemed highly unlikely. George's friend also contradicted her claim about leaving early. In reality, he stayed until well past 3 a.m., long after Katie suggested he had gone. His memory of the night was crystal clear, especially because of one unusual detail. "I think around 3 or 3:30 I went to go get tacos," he recalled. "I got the party pack or something. For some reason I couldn't believe I actually went and got tacos. I know for a fact I got them extremely late. I had to go through the drive-thru even though I wasn't in a car. I had to walk through their speaker system and order that way. That was funny, but I know I left at 5, or very close to that time. Right after 5, I texted Dream that I left. I opened the deadbolt on his door right after I left and texted him to let him know. That was around 5. This detail about the taco run might sound insignificant, but it's actually critical. It showed that Katie's timeline of events was inaccurate, either by accident or by design. And when pieced together with her shifting explanations, her withheld details, and her attempts to reframe George's actions, the inconsistencies piled up higher and higher. Yet, despite these cracks in her story, many online chose to ignore them. Instead, they doubled down on the idea that George had crossed a line the moment he engaged in physical affection without verbal consent. To his critics, that one fact outweighed any contradictions, omissions, or questionable evidence Katie had presented. The tragedy for George was that once the internet collectively decides something, walking it back becomes almost impossible. His attempts at clarification, his friend's testimony, and even the exposure of dubious evidence did little to shift the narrative. To the general public, GeorgeNotFound was guilty in the court of opinion, long before any meaningful discussion could take place. And in many ways, that's the harsh reality of online scandals. They're not decided by courts, but by viral tweets, Reddit threads, and 10-minute commentary videos. For George, the fallout was brutal. His brand, once associated with lighthearted Minecraft streams and wholesome friendships, was now entangled with allegations of misconduct, betrayal, and fractured trust. His fanbase reduced, his collaborators pulled away, and the broader internet painted him as another man whose career got ruined due to allegations of assault. By this point, one of the most glaring contradictions in Katie's narrative centered on her friends. In her 10-page document, Katie implied that her friends had felt uneasy about her interactions with George. This detail carried weight because if people in the room were uncomfortable, it could reinforce the idea that George had crossed boundaries in plain sight.
Should be. Nothing came out of nowhere. Everything progressed very slowly throughout the night. And also, before I continue, I want to make it clear that the furthest anything ever got was under the shirt touching and cuddling. Now, obviously, people don't typically ask if everything is okay, even such as touching someone's waist under their shirt before they do it. But in this case, I was extremely slow, and she was engaging with me the entire time, laughing, cuddling with me, and even playfully fighting me for the game that we were playing. Again, the quote that she said, he disguised it with a simple, "Are you ticklish?" I coughed out a no. She's implying that it's with malicious intent, and that she...
But when Dream revisited those conversations months earlier, the story didn't line up. He remembered reaching out to her circle of friends, asking if they had noticed anything unusual, and their responses were consistent. Nothing seemed wrong. Dream himself admitted he had no idea Katie was even referring to George in her first tweet. He initially assumed she was suggesting discomfort with him. Confused, he messaged Ghosty, one of Katie's close friends, to ask what the tweet was about. He did the same with other friends, including Katie herself, but George's name never came up. This detail became more important when George later presented Dream's messages with G. In those exchanges, Katie never once mentioned George at all. Dream even joked about Harry making things up, pointing out that nothing had happened and that the friend group was still intact at the time.
That she was uncomfortable with it. She was not moving. She was not speaking. Of course, I don't believe that silence is consent. I just want to make sure that it is abundantly clear. She was visibly and physically responding well to everything that we were doing. I also want to comment on how she said that she had to stand up after many minutes for it to stop. She did get up multiple times throughout the night. For example, to go to the bathroom, to get a drink. Also, when her friends left, she got up to say goodbye to them, and she would come back to the same scenario. I also just want to point out that her best friend was here during this whole...
To strengthen this point, George included a clip of Ghosty directly addressing the matter, clarifying what had really been said in their private DMs with Dream.
Like this internet stuff like that, so I'm not up to date with what's going on online. The way she was explaining everything, I mean, at least to me, like it was not like that at all. To me, it kind of seems like a misunderstanding. There wasn't really a thought in my mind that, like, oh, this girl, like, could be in some sort of danger, or she's being...
This clip completely undercut Caitie's claim. If her closest friends hadn't noticed anything inappropriate and had directly told Dream nothing seemed wrong, then her later suggestion that people were visibly uneasy around George looked less like truth and more like retroactive framing.
Important claim happens. I'm just going to read the quote. She says, "Out of nowhere, I felt him slip his hand under my clothes, sitting next to me on the couch, in front of everyone. He disguised it with a simple, 'Are you ticklish?' I coughed out a no, and still staring at my phone, I was overly aware of the fact that we were in front of other people. The fact that everyone else was sitting around us, watching us, including my best friend, and that his hand was inching further to places I hadn't asked it to be. Again, as I mentioned before, we had previously been cuddling on this couch for around an hour, but I did place my hand on her waist under her shirt. The way it's phrased makes it sound like it just happened out of nowhere, when in reality we'd been cuddling for over an hour at this point, and it was not out of nowhere. It was also around half an hour until I started moving my hand further up, and the way it's phrased just makes it seem like it happened pretty instantly and pretty quickly. There was nothing quick about it, it was very slow.
For George, however, even exposing these contradictions wasn't enough. Despite having evidence that challenged Caitie's version, he still chose to close his video with another apology, and this time it was one of his most vulnerable statements yet.
At Dream Spot. Then it was just us three for a bit, and then you or Dream mentioned like just having some people come over and hang out. We were playing, I forget what the drinking was called. I think it was kind of like Cards Against Humanity, something similar to that. I didn't really notice anything out of the ordinary. I didn't really notice any like bad vibes or anything like that. It was a little playful, maybe a little flirty. I noticed that you guys were just kind of like playing with each other and just like kind of cuddled up a little bit on the couch. So it definitely didn't seem like she was like uncomfortable, you know? It seemed like everybody that was there was having a good time, because I mean, we were there pretty late, so I don't really follow like this internet stuff like that, so I'm not up to date with what's going on online. The way she was explaining everything, I mean, at least to me, like it was not like that at all. To me, it kind of seems like a misunderstanding. There wasn't really a thought in my mind that like, oh, this...
It was an admission of failure, not of intent, but of carelessness. George was acknowledging that he never directly asked for verbal consent, and that statement would haunt him, because Caitie wasn't willing to accept his apology. Just 10 days later, on March 24th, 2024, she went live to respond, and in doing so, escalated the situation even further. This time, Caitie reframed the entire narrative. In her words,
He felt up my tits. On a couch with other people there. He stuck his hand up my shirt, under my bra, and felt up, whatever you want to say. He felt up my tits. Unwanted sexual touch is literally in the definition of sexual assault. It's f***ing sexual assault, and I'm never gonna apologize for saying it is, okay? It isn't fake allegations. It's not fake allegations. I'm not a liar. Quite literally, the thing that I was talking about is my sexual assault, and that's the one thing he confirmed. He can sit there and confirm that he did it, and I'm still sat here getting called a liar, getting called a fake victim, getting called, what was it, a slut and a prude at the same time.
The change of tone was unmistakable. In earlier posts, Caitie had focused on her discomfort and George's failure to recognize it. Now, she was directly branding him as a sexual assaulter. And she didn't stop there. She spent the better part of an hour backtracking on her earlier claims, revising details, and introducing new allegations that had never once been part of the story before.
Could have even understood if it would have been I know we have different perspectives of the night, and I know I assumed stuff that I shouldn't have, but I'm still sorry for hurting you. Period. But anytime again he readmits to the fact that he touched me without consent, it's followed with a but. It's followed with a yes, I touched you. Yes, I didn't ask if it was okay. But you were smiling. But you seemed like you would have wanted it. But I assumed you wanted it because I'm fucking sick of it. I'm fucking sick of the but. I'm just so sick of it. And not even just that, it's then put into this video where the entire video is picking apart my story once again. Picking apart every single thing I said. And once again focusing on things that are irrelevant to the fact that he fucking touched me. I mean, being like, whoa, she said my friend left early, but really he left late. What the fuck does that have to do with you touching?
For many viewers, Caitie's response video was quite vindicative. Every time one of Caitie's claims was disproven or contradicted by evidence, she returned with a new version, one more aggressive and damaging than the last. To critics, this wasn't just inconsistency, it was malice. And that's what made people so frustrated. It wasn't just that her story kept changing, it was the way she delivered each new version with more confidence, as if daring anyone to call her out.
And I even asked, the person he's getting to confirm his point of view is his best friend. Or the guy that he called in the video, again his friend. The three guys that were there, the one guy I didn't mention, and the other two are all friends. He says, well, she wasn't uncomfortable. Well, she seemed like she was fine. And I asked Dream about this. That's his best friend that is helping him make these videos. He is quite literally helping him and sending him stuff to make these videos, these edited responses that he's making them with Dream, and then he's using Dream as a source to tell if I was okay or not. I mean, and this friend, whose career is also on the line because they've built their careers together. If he goes down, they both go down. They're obviously gonna back each other up. And I do acknowledge, this is me acknowledging.
For some, it felt less like a victim recounting her trauma, and more like someone determined to win a personal battle at any cost. Every correction, every contradiction became fuel for her next allegation.
You know, if that was tame to him, or if he's done stuff like this before, you think he'd know better. The power imbalance. No, I didn't bring up power and say how I was excited to be there because of his clout. I wasn't using him for his clout. That's not why power is important here. Him going and being like, I feel used. Cry me a river. That's not why I brought up the power. Why power is important in this is because I looked up to them. I was an aspiring creator, and these were the biggest creators in the industry. I before I started streaming, I watched these people. I watched the Dream SMP. I did that shit. I looked up to them. I was excited.
Even supporters who initially rallied behind her began to hesitate. They noticed how details that should have been central, like the timeline, the setting, or even what George supposedly did, changed depending on the backlash she faced. Instead of clearing things up, she only made them murkier. And when the truth keeps changing, people start questioning whether there was ever any truth at all.
Yeah, even though George is my friend, if I noticed him doing anything that I wouldn't want someone I'm friends with to do, then I would I either would say something about it or not be a part of that situation.
She says that you left early on in the night. Could you talk about that?
I think around 3 or 3:30 I went to go get taucos. I think I got the party pack or something. For some reason I couldn't believe I actually went and got tacos. I know for a fact that I got the tacos extremely late. I had to go in their drive-thru even when I was in a car. I had to walk through their drive-thru and order through their speaker. That was fun. I know I left at 5 or very close to that time because right after 5 I texted Dream that I left open the deadbolt on his door. Right after I left, I texted him that to let him know. I think that was at 5:10 a.m. I can genuinely say I had a really good night. That's kind of the impression that I got from everybody else too. Everybody was having a good time, but hopefully you and Caitie can maybe, I don't know if be friends is the right word, but...
This time, however, the internet noticed. For the first time since the controversy began, a wave of doubt spread across social media. Redditors began pointing out how Kaitie's story was shifting with every new statement. One user wrote, "Is leaving out the fact that they were literally spooning for an hour not leaving out details?" Even those who weren't die-hard George supporters began questioning Kaitie's credibility. They noted her growing follower count, the increasingly dramatic language she used, and the way each live stream or post seemed designed to escalate rather than clarify. What began as a serious allegation now looked, to many, like a performance.
I won't have...
And while plenty of viewers still held fast to Kaitie's statement that George's actions were assault, others were seeing more and more signs that GeorgeNotFound was not guilty of those allegations. For the first time since Kaitie began campaigning against George, people finally took note of how much she had altered her story to make him look predatory. She responded by deleting all her posts, removing George's name from her Twitch, privating her Twitter, and disabling comments on her YouTube channel in an attempt to mitigate the backlash she now faced.
Kaitie has now gone and re-uploaded her streams, and only her more recent stream, no others, and changing the title that says "Final Thoughts was taken down, cleared it." Not sure what cleared it means exactly. Maybe the takedown was refuted. Not sure. I do find it odd that it was taken down. Not to be speculatory or assume anything, but last time we talked about theories floating around about George attempting to take legal action against her because of these videos, but nothing along those lines is public yet.
Even though Kaitie's allegations were proven to be blown out of proportion, they still left a scar on George's career. George, who used to have 10.2 million subscribers, lost over 300,000 subs, and now has 9.88 million subscribers. He also had a collaboration with MrBeast cancelled, and possibly lost any chance of attending future creator conventions. Dozens of creators also jumped at the chance to slander his name.
The problem lies in that George didn't know, and he should have known. He should have known.
But it's worth noting that George also played a role in his downfall when he chose to bend the knee to Kaitie and her fellow accusers. Looking at his channel metrics now, it's unclear if George will ever truly recover. What we do know is that he'll be left alone to rebuild his dying platform. At first, things really did look grim. 100,000 subscribers gone, his name scrubbed from MrBeast post, pulled from VidCon promos, and even removed from the Nox Crew site. It felt like his entire career was going downhill at that point. Others went even further, arguing the real problem wasn't controversy, it was silence. Months without uploads meant his channel was stagnating, and for a creator built on momentum, that silence was louder than any drama. Another fan admitted, "Honestly, I'm not surprised it happened. If an inactive channel uploads a video, people who have lost interest will be reminded that they're subscribed and are likely to unsubscribe." People started reasoning that George wasn't entirely at fault. Maybe the Kaitie situation hurt him, sure, but for many fans, the real issue wasn't the controversy, it was his absence. A new upload was simply a reminder that they hadn't seen him in so long, and it nudged them to clean up their subscriptions. But everything changed when CaitiiBugs returned with yet another statement. This time she posted to her Discord, calling it a farewell thought on the entire ordeal. In her own words, she doubled down on the narrative. She was a vulnerable girl who got taken advantage of. She admitting to getting details of the story wrong, but insisted that her emotions were still real.
As much as I'm glad so many people are connecting with me and, feeling better about themselves, it hurts seeing how many people can relate. It hurts hearing the stories people are coming out with. It's great.
For a lot of people, this so-called farewell didn't land the way she hoped. Instead of clearing the air, it reignited anger. One comment summed up the general sentiment perfectly while saying, "I hope George gains his success back. He was innocent and just trying to be more successful and not be in any controversy. Hope Kaitie will forever stay out of people's lane." And that became the larger conversation. Because if you really read between the lines, she wasn't apologizing for the lies, the twisted timeline, or the damage she caused. She was apologizing for being caught.
Okay, listen, so after what seems like months now, maybe weeks, I don't know, it's been a while since it's happened, but CaitiiBugs has now returned to a degree. Not only re-uploading her streams about GeorgeNotFound, but also posting this little announcement here, which I'll go over in a sec. But I just want to say before we start, don't go after anyone that I talk about in this. I understand this topic can be divisive, but please try to be respectful. Anyways, Katie says, I'm sorry, sucks, I love you guys. Always remember, I believe in y'all. You are the best community anybody could ask for. Pure kindness. I'll be gone a while. Anyways, following this announcement here,
It would appear that Katie's focus was on not being a voice for sexual assault victims, which felt like a backhanded way of excusing her role in the whole affair rather than truly owning up to it. So what do you think? Is GeorgeNotFound solely to blame for how things turned out? Or does CaitiiBugs deserve some of the blame? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to share if you think we missed any of the biggest turning points in George's story.